Yes, the narrative has to change. Government policies is number one, but back to back with that, our support structures amongst us as Africans to support the families and the members of the community that are involved in this. But poverty remains the biggest problem, because until you address poverty, you are exposing your people to mediocre lives, human migration, and etc., because they are looking for a better life. And worse on the whole itinerary is that the African governments, when they get into power, there seems to be no political will to transform this narrative where the African child becomes valuable. It takes us back to one of those conversations that we had some time ago when I was asking you, Dr. Tata, what is the value of one African? What is the value of the one African? If we knew the value of one African who does not have an academic qualification, but simply because we're born in Africa, when you add together the resources of Africa, the land of Africa, the minerals of Africa, and you add all that up together and you divide by the population of Africa, that should give you the value of one black child who is walking on this continent. Unfortunately, our leaders are not even aware of the value of the lives of the African. If they don't know the value, how can they value the value? And so it speaks to political rewiring that we prioritize the drainage and the hemorrhage of the African mind, because poverty results in human migration. Human migration results in professional people of Africa running into Europe for better pastures. And it exposes the poor people to abuse by the common local people and the international. So it becomes a complex problem where we can begin to talk about poverty becoming the source of the African problem. So the real question is, how do we begin to alleviate African poverty so that human trafficking and human slavery in our 21st century, United Nations, Africa Union, they are quiet on these issues. They seem to be totally oblivious. They talk about refugees, and all those things as if they are political little dogmas. But can you look closely into what is happening in those refugee camps? The other day you saw a video making rounds on the internet where American soldiers were raping refugees. Who talks about that? Where you're talking about American soldiers and French soldiers being involved in illegal diamond mining in Congo. While people are fighting, they're busy pulling diamonds and pulling in their pockets, and the governments are involved, the American governments are involved in illegal diamond dealings. Who talks about that? When you talk about American governments selling weapons to African leaders, African opposition leaders, so that there's war in Ethiopia right now, who talks about that? Where economy is driving politics. And this political instability is resulting in the death of Africans. What are our political leaders? What are our religious leaders saying about this? But the African Ethiopian war, I don't want to call it an Ethiopian war, I want to call it the African war, is happening, but we don't know of Ethiopia being responsible for producing weapons. So the question we must be asking is, who is selling these weapons to the Ethiopians? And again, I want to stand up and shout and say, if the Americans and the Europeans believe in democracy, and the president that is sitting right now in Ethiopia is a legitimate democratic president who has been elected by the Ethiopians to run power, why are we not using the same democratic system to resolve this problem? No, the Americans will not do that. They will look for oppositions and play into the tribal misunderstandings of the tribes. Similar thing, what is happening in Ethiopia is what happened in Rwanda, the Hutus and the Tutsis. And in Ethiopia right now is tribal wars. But when you're talking about tribal wars, the question is, who is sponsoring that tribal war? Who is giving funding to that tribal war? Who is selling weapons to that tribal war? Why is the American government not satisfied with a legitimate government that the Ethiopian people have put into power? I'll tell you why. Because the Ethiopian economy, it is crucial for the Kenyan economy. It is crucial for the Sudanese economy. It is crucial for the Egyptian economy. It is crucial for the Ugandan community. It is crucial for the Sudanese community because of the Nile River. So if America can have its hands on Ethiopia, they will have access to Africa, particularly Northeast Africa. They can also put an air base that can give them access to Israel and the Middle East. So we know this war, in the bigger scheme of things, it is America trying to establish a military base through which they can influence Northeast Africa and the Middle East. So it's not about Ethiopia. The Ethiopians can shout as much as they want that, no, we don't want this president, we want the other ones. But if you look at the bigger scheme of things, the Ethiopian government is actually being overthrown by the American government because of the political strategic positioning of Ethiopia when it comes to controlling Egypt, Sudan, Djibouti, Burkina Faso, Kenya, Uganda, and Sudan. Then you ask yourself, what are the resources that are being found in this country that America wants to find it fit to put an American base in Ethiopia? What is it that they want to accomplish? Those are critical questions that the African leaders, particularly Africa Union, needs to start discussing and talking about. When this war is won by the Ethiopians, what does it mean? When this war is won by the Americans, what does it mean? The foolishness of our leadership. They think that when one country is in trouble, it does not affect them. The bigger picture is that when one country is overcome, who is next? Who is next? And who is next? It's one customer at a time. So if Ethiopia falls, the question is, when America has established a base in Ethiopia, what is the next bus stop? I'll tell you ahead of time. Prove me wrong this time next year. Sudan will be the next bus stop because of the oil reserves that are in Sudan. Sudan is the third largest resource of oil in the whole world right now as we speak. The Great River Nile is the next biggest thing because water in the next 30 years will become one of the most scarce commodities. I mean, clean water. And Africa right now holds one of the biggest reserves of clean water in the whole world. So water and oil, number 3, mineral resources. And fourthly, political, military, strategic war zone places where the European government and the American governments wants to place themselves in a strategic position to fight other countries. So when one country falls, it doesn't mean that the country has fallen. It means that the next country that is neighboring, that is the resources that they want, is next online. It is not a secret. Go on the internet and Google how many military bases does America have in Africa. You will find that all of them are strategically positioned. In the south, here in Southern Africa, Botswana is a military base for the American government, because from Botswana, they can strike Namibia, they can strike South Africa, they can strike Zambia, they can strike Zimbabwe, they can strike Lesotho, they can strike Swaziland, they can strike Mozambique. So you find a country from which you can put a base where you can influence. In Central Africa, where is America having its interest? Congo is strategic. Angola is strategic. In Northeast Africa, Ethiopia is strategic. And in West Africa, between Ghana, Cameroon, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, and Burkina Faso, part of the central, and on the southern side, which is Guinea-Conakry. You must find where there is war, and you'll understand why the Americans are there, to make sure that this country and this government falls in favor of themselves. So if they can put 4 to 5 strategic military bases in Africa, they can be able to manage the African resources, but also challenge the Chinese influence on the African continent. Should war arise in the future, the Americans are positioning themselves to make sure that when this war takes place, they will use this basis as an influential and a military strategic position to strike the countries that are nearby. Missiles that are being developed now, you can strike 500, 600, 700, 1,000 to 3,000 kilometers away. They cannot launch those. They cannot launch those missiles from Texas and Dallas and Houston. They need to be on the ground, closer to the place where the problem is. And immediately, African governments open up these doors. They're actually allowing an enemy to come close to themselves, but also close to the neighboring countries where the American and the European, the Chinese and the French governments have interest in those countries. So we are at war. I can't say it louder. We are at war, and our African leaders are selling Africa. Yes, opening a military base for the American people comes at a big profit to your country. Sanctions are lifted, donor monies are given, support is given, and etc. Your country seems to be progressing, but at what expense? At what cost to the African continent? That's the question we need to start asking. Ethiopia falls, Africa has fallen. Ethiopia falls, Africa has fallen. The whole of Northeast Africa is closed.